So today we're going to do a little experiment on boondocking. We're going to install a SmartShunt so we can measure the battery drain, and then once we get it down to a certain level, we'll measure the battery charging again using different methods like solar, engine alternator, generator power, engine shore power. For this example, we'll use a 2022 Jayco Precept 31UL motorhome. Well, today I'm going to install the Victron SmartShunt battery monitor in the RV. This will allow me to measure battery capacity and more accurately determine when my battery gets low while boondocking. It's a pretty simple procedure where we just hook the SmartShunt to the negative side of the battery, and the rest of the leads that go to the negative side of the RV go on the other side of the shunt. And then there's a red wire that goes from the battery shunt to the positive side of the battery that powers the shunt. This motorhome has two 6-volt gel batteries wired in series to create 12 volts, and they're rated at 220 amps. Once the SmartShunt is installed, we can download the app. Using Bluetooth, the SmartShunt broadcasts information to the app so we can monitor the battery. Using the app, we'll conduct our little experiment. So we unplugged the shore power, and now we're on battery through the inverter power. So we'll have the TV with soundbar, all the lights on in the coach, the refrigerator will be running, and the TV in the bedroom will be running. We'll monitor the power usage and how long until the batteries are drained down to 50%. Then we'll check how to recharge the batteries using the generator, shore power, and solar power, and the engine running through the alternator. And we'll see which method works best. It's interesting to note with our control panel here, it says the house voltage is 12.4 volts. Our inverter says the batteries have 12 volts. And through our app, the SmartShunt says the voltage is 12.58 volts. Okay, every so often I'm going to come back in and check the status of the discharge of the batteries. It's been about a half hour and we're at 93% state of charge. And it's still using almost 26 amps, 320 watts. It says it has about less than 3 hours of battery life time remaining. Now that's going to go up and down a little bit as the refrigerator cycles on and off, but the other stuff should be pretty steady with the TV lights on. The voltage is 12.51 volts. Let's check the inverter says 11.9 volts, and the control panel here says 12.3 volts. So it's been about an hour and a half. We're at 78% state of charge, 12.36 volts, still drawing 330 watts. This says we have about an hour and 52 minutes left with the batteries. Let's go check the other voltages. So again, our app says 12.36. The inverter, Xantrex inverter, says 11.8. and our control panel says 12.1. So a little bit of variance there. I don't know why the inverter shows a little bit lower, but we'll keep an eye on that. We'll check back a little bit later. Okay, it's been about 2.5 hours now. We're at 65% battery life, 12.22 volts, still drawing around 330 watts. And the time remaining says about an hour. Let's go ahead and check the relative voltage here. Again, the app says 12.23 volts. The control panel says 12.0, and it actually shows the battery level going down a little bit. I didn't know that it did that, but it has a little graphic showing that. And our inverter shows 11.6 volts. Alright, we're coming up on 3 hours and we're at 60% charge. The voltage is 12.18 volts. And time remaining to 50% charge, it says, is 41 minutes. Checking the other gauges here in the motorhome. The control panel shows 12 volts. It was at 11.9 for there for a second, and it turned red. There's a red. So it's telling me at 12 volts is 50%, and that's when you start damaging the battery. So that's a nice little indicator there. The Xantrex inverter shows 11.6 volts. So again, that's less. So we're going to go ahead and turn off the load for the battery now, and then we're going to do a little experiment on charging the battery, see which system charges the battery fastest. So we're going to go ahead and turn off the TV in the bedroom. We'll turn off the TV in the living room, and the sound bar should turn off also. And we'll go ahead and turn off all the lights. Check our app. And now you can see the wattage is down to 123 watts, almost 10 amps. And we're going to go ahead and turn off the inverter, which will turn off the refrigerator. And that should have turned off the refrigerator, and it did. So the refrigerator's off. So most of the loads are off right now. We do have, up here we have a little clock that continues to run, and I have a little hotspot that draws very low amperage, and maybe like a phone charger or something. So pretty much everything is off. So let's go check the loads now. Here's the load. We're still at 60% battery. So we're drawing 37 watts and about 3 amps with the other little stuff around the motorhome that keeps running even when you have everything just about off. And you can see, you know, the time remaining goes up to 2 hours and 15 minutes and more, the more stuff we shut off. So we're going to go ahead and note these values, and then we're going to start charging the batteries. So I've set up some solar panels. They're suitcase solar panels. They're 200 watts. It's just about noon, and I have them just about squared up with the sun pretty well. I'm going to hook those up to the batteries and see what kind of charge we get with those. I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. And now you can see the wattage changing. These are solar panels are rated, again, 200 watts, and you'll never get exactly 200 watts out of it with all the inefficiencies. If the sun's perfect, the temperature's perfect, all that. But we're getting about 140 watts out of them, and that's pretty decent. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the solar panels from the batteries. And you can see the wattage and amperage change. And if you're curious, here's how I hook up the solar panel with the batteries. I have this cable that goes from the solar panel with this connector, and I just already attached this connector onto the batteries. and so I just plug this on or off. The solar panels also come with alligator clips like that you can hook onto the battery terminals, but this just seems a little cleaner operation. Alright, so next we're going to go inside and we're going to start up the engine of the coach to see how that charges. So in the cab we're going to start up the engine and see what the alternator puts out. Again, we're about minus 1.752 amps, minus 22 watts. So after starting the engine, I see that the amperage and wattage really hasn't changed that much, so maybe the inverter is also a battery charger, so I might have to turn that back on. So I'm going to go to the back and turn on the inverter. It's all a learning experience. So with the inverter turning on now, the wattage really goes up because I got a feeling the refrigerator is turning on. So let's go ahead and turn the refrigerator off. One way we can do that in this particular model is we hold the refrigerator button and tap the Ice Plus button 3 times. Alright, so now the refrigerator is off now, so the compressor's not running. This light will turn on, but this is display mode for when they go to sell a refrigerator. So when I close the door, the refrigerator shouldn't be using any wattage at all. And now we have quite a bit of wattage from the battery charger from the alternator. We can see the voltage on the app is 13.64. The inverter is 13.5, and you can see it's 13.7 here as it's charging. So the battery state of charge is still at 60%, so it's going to take a while for it to get back up. But this is significantly more than the solar panels, as we would predict. Now I'm going ahead and turn the engine off. And we can see it goes back down to drawing power out of the battery once the alternator stopped charging. Alright, next we're going to start the onboard generator. It's Onan 5500 generator. Get it primed and start it up. So the generator takes a while usually before it will accept a load, so it warms up for just a minute or two. Just heard the relay clunk on, and the generator is charging. Looks like the generator is charging maybe a little bit less than the engine alternator. 60 amps for the generator, and it was about almost 70 amps for the engine alternator. So again, you can see that this isn't, the voltage isn't really a good indication of the battery level while it's either being discharged or recharged. That's why this little SmartShunt works so well, is it keeps track of how much consumed amperage, and it's stated here in a graphic form, 62%. So it's kind of like a gas tank. You know, you're taking gas out, you're putting gas back in, and it keeps track of that, and that's like your gas gauge right here. Again, we don't want to get below 50%. You start damaging the battery. Alright, so the onboard generator, the Onan 5500, looks like it charges about 60 amps, where the alternator on the engine was about 70 amps. So it's just a little bit less. That might take a little bit longer to charge if you're wondering. Alright, we're going to shut off the generator and we're going to go try plugging into shore power and see what the charge rate is for that. I'm going to plug in the shore power. So after plugging in the shore power, the amperage is about 61 and power is 830. So again, it's about like the generator, about the same amount. So I wonder if they all go through the same battery charger and get about the same power out of it. It looks like it's very similar. Shore power, generator power, alternator power seems to look a little bit more from the engine, and solar is just the weakest depending on how much solar you have.
Well, that should wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something. I know I did. Here's some notes I kept about the draw and charging values.